Hello and welcome to Taking Time with Tasha. I am the aforementioned Tasha, and this is sort of my new venture where I'll be trying to just take a little bit of time for myself to practice some hand skills, whether that be stitching or making or craft of another kind. And I just wanted to sort of document and share those makes with you. I always find that doing things with my hands is quite soothing, and in the sort of madness of the world at the moment, I do find it quite comforting to take a little bit of time just for me to make something almost just for the sake of making it. A sort of meditation, if you will. Gives me a little bit of time to process some things in my mind while still feeling like I'm achieving something. This piece is a piece I started a little while ago. You can see how many stitches are already in it. And this is practicing a technique called Tambour. Tambour is usually used for couture embroidery outcomes, most commonly done with beads or sequins, the likes of which you might have seen in like high fashion brands, things like Chanel and Dior. Classy stuff. Here I'm just using the stitches, which is a sort of chain stitch that you create with this hook. And it is quite an unusual embroidery method. You sort of need to know a little bit about embroidery to probably have come across it. But I am a professional embroiderer, although I don't often tambour professionally. But I do enjoy it, and that sort of repetitive motion is really useful for the meditative effects that I mentioned earlier. It's one of these things that you really do sort of have to keep your hand in and keep the skill alive if you want it to come out a certain way. And so I often like to have a piece on the go that I can pick up and put down as I like and as I have time. But today I have decided to carve out a little bit of time for myself and in turn for you to work on this piece a bit further and sort of see what it becomes. Some of you may already know me. I do teach classes and do the voiceovers for London Embroidery School. So you may recognise my voice from there. And so this is my little offshoot where you'll probably see a little bit of what goes into keeping those skills alive and ready to use when I need them for work. All of these things do take practice. So you do have to find time to make that work for you. I'm very lucky in the aspect that my work is my passion, and so although this is a work of sorts, I don't find it draining in the way that other people might. I think particularly because it's something that grew out of my hobbies. And I find that the more time I'm able to take to do this sort of thing, the more it reminds me of how and why I got into my field of work in the first place. They say if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't know if that's entirely true, because I always think that things worthwhile doing are worth working for. And just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean you don't have to work on it. And also, when your work is your work, you do have to, have the good days with the not so great days. But I guess that's all just part and parcel of working, particularly in a creative industry. I'm really just making this piece up as I go along. As I mentioned, it's more for the sake of doing than it is for the final outcome. But equally, it is quite satisfying to step away at the end and have a look at what it's starting to look like. And hopefully being pleased with the outcome. As I mentioned, my journey on YouTube has been a bit of a revelation. I didn't really expect to be doing this year, but then this year nothing has really gone to plan. For me, and I'm sure for many of you as well. But since taking the London Embroidery School online, as we have about 6 months ago, I've really been overwhelmed by the kindness and enthusiasm and even gratitude of people that we've come into contact with on YouTube. It's really sort of made me appreciate the value of people, even those you don't meet. And so it's lovely to have my faith in people restored a little bit. I'm sure that many of you, like me, are sort of trying to see the positives out of this very strange situation we've found ourselves in. And that's definitely one of mine. Something that I'm really trying to be grateful for. I've often thought that the internet is a little bit of a scary place, you know? You can say so much with so much anonymity that, you know, people on the internet often aren't that kind. And when we started doing the stuff online, it was one of those things where we're like, chances are it's not always going to be nice. And we were prepared for that, but what we weren't prepared for was actually how much the good and positive outweighs the bad. And I'm not saying that it is like all sweetness and light all the time. And once again, I have prepared myself that that might be the case with this little adventure of mine as well. But something tells me that whatever I'm doing, people are often interested to see how it works. And so in that respect, I feel like there's very little to lose. And there may well be good things to come out of this. You do join me on a particularly rainy day. And again, I don't know about you, but there's something quite nice about listening to the rain. So hopefully you're enjoying that as much as I am. I wonder if, whilst you join me, whether you are just listening and doing your own thing. Are you just sort of chilling out? Or are you two making something? Are you tambouring with me? Makes me wonder about the connections between us and what has brought you to watching this today. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're well and looking after yourself. I think that's all we can do at the moment. Let's just try our best. I'm feeling good today. This little window of opportunity that I've managed to find here is definitely making me feel good. So if you haven't tried making something, then perhaps that's something that you might want to consider might be beneficial for you too. I don't know about you, but I feel like it's been raining for days here. And whilst I like to watch and listen to the rain from inside, it's a slightly different story when you have to go outside in it. Having said that, it does have its moments where feeling the rain on your face is quite nice. But only under certain conditions, hey? This is probably the first of the sort of downturn of the weather this year. I am more of a summer person myself. I was born in the summer and it suits me much better than the winter. So I am a little bit sad at the thought that that is now over. Though amongst everything else, we did get a good summer this year. Here in the UK, which is where you join me from. If you hadn't already guessed from my accent. The room in which I'm sitting is a little outhouse building. And so it's under a big cherry tree, which is probably what you can hear every now and then when the rain moves and the wind shakes that tree. And then I get the big drops on the ceiling, like right there on cue, as they fall off of that tree and onto the roof of this little building. Despite of the rain, I've just had a little squirrel run past the window here. He didn't notice me, which is always quite fun, but he was very busy all the same. Fortunately for wildlife watching, embroidery is quite still, so you don't exactly create a lot of movement to notify them of your presence. And there is something quite special about doing something makery, whether it is embroidery or sewing, but also being out in nature. It's all very calming. I don't know whether you can still see some of the ink stains on my fingers or not, but I also have an interest in calligraphy, which is something I'm not particularly good at, but it's something I do enjoy and like to pick up every now and then, a bit like this. And just write some words. Doesn't really matter what the words are. Perhaps another time I will share some of my practices in calligraphy instead of embroidery, for a change. I've also been thinking about trying to pick up my knitting, which I've never really been very good at, though I have tried a few times. And there's a couple of things I really think I'd like to make, so maybe I should.